Hi guys, so welcome to the PowerPoint. This one's going to be a bit quicker this week because you have the whole play available for you to watch and to read as well if you want to. So I'm just going to take you through some of the basics, and we'll talk more in depth next week. So, just to start, okay, Samuel Beckett's Endgame is a one-act play. It's often cited as being an example of the theatre of the absurd, which means that while the work has an internal coherence, so it obeys its own logic, it's not complete nonsense. It's also not clear what happens, it's not clear where it is, and it's not clear what the overall meaning of what we're seeing is supposed to be. It's not an excuse me, it's not an allegorical play, for example, and it's not necessarily a symbolic artwork. It's not clear what Beckett wants to say with this play, if he wants to say anything at all. And yeah, like several of his major works, especially from towards the middle, or from the middle of his life onwards, Endgame was originally written in French and was entitled Fin de Partie. It was first performed in London in 1957. One point about Beckett in French is that he chose to write in French, he said, because he felt as if it would be a more alienating experience for him to write in a language that was not his native language. He wanted to make sure that he got rid of any kind of unnecessary comfort or warmth in his writing. And he thought the best way to do that would be to write in French instead of English, his native language. But obviously, his French was very, very good. And he lived in Paris for several years of his life, as you will see if you look at the videos I've also asked you to watch. Okay, so Endgame features four characters: Ham, Clov, Nag, and Nell. Ham and Clov form the main relationship in the play. Ham is an older blind man, and Clov is either his nurse or his carer or his domestic servant, something like that. But it's also not entirely clear what their relationship is, whether they were friends before, how they met. These are all things that we don't really get a clear sense of, but there are hints of it throughout the play. Nag and Nell are Ham's elderly parents, and they live in bins or trash cans, which are positioned on one side of the stage. They're not present for the whole play, but they come out of their trash cans at different points. As we see here, Nag occasionally calls out to his son to demand his pap, which is this kind of basic, almost baby food, or for a biscuit or a kind of sugary treat. Apart from that, he only interacts with his wife, and Nell only ever speaks to Nag. She doesn't speak to any of the other characters. Okay, so Nag and Nell have significantly fewer lines than Ham and Clov, and they have basically no agency within the world of the play. They're in bins, and they don't leave them. Despite this, though, they are a very important part of the tableau, so the kind of image and the setting that Beckett creates. And again, the meaning of their relationship is not clear, but neither is the meaning of anything else in Endgame. So yeah, because the meaning isn't clear isn't a criticism here. It's just Beckett's work it resists interpretation in a way which actually is quite thrilling and very moving if you let it be. So they have one important dialogue in the first third of Endgame, and in this part of the play, they emerge from their bins and kind of have a conversation with each other. In this conversation, they reflect on how badly they are treated by Ham, and each asks the other whether or not he's changed their sawdust, suggesting that they live like animals. They actually have a little argument over whether it's sawdust or sand, as you will see when you watch the play. So Nag and Nell appear to have died about 3/4 of the way through Endgame. Clov goes and kind of opens up their lids and and Ham asks him whether or not they're dead, and Clove kind of said, "Yeah, I think so," but it's even that isn't completely clear. So now we're just going to go on to just one point about the play, which I think is important for how we read all the characters. So we have to kind of talk about it, even though we will mainly be talking about the major things to do with the play next week. This week is more of an introduction and a focus on the smaller couple to start with. But yeah, the German philosopher Adorno wrote that Endgame presented a world in which time has collapsed completely into space. And what this means, sorry about this, just ignore that for a second. I'm going to turn my Wi-Fi off. Yeah, I'm not. Go away, Katie. Sorry, guys. What this means is that nothing happens anymore in the play. It's as if possibility has kind of evaporated from the world, and there's no chance for anything new. And again, we'll look at more of the specifics of this next week. But if we take Adorno's claim as being true about the play, then what this means is that we understand each of the characters and each of the relationships of the characters based on how they respond to this absence of possibility, to the fact that nothing is really happening. And we'll look at this more next week again. But with Ham and Clove, you get the sense that they recognize that in some way the world is over, but also they still have this kind of sense of time passing. You have this refrain that something is taking its course, this kind of passive. They're caught up in some kind of movement that they can't identify and that may not even mean anything. Nag and Nell, on the other hand, are much more focused on the past, and they're much more focused on memory. Or they're focused on their kind of very basic immediate needs. So whether they have eaten, whether their sawdust has been changed, something like that. So yeah, in the extract you can read and watch on eCampus, you can see that the two, they exchange greetings, they discuss their situation and the nature of happiness, and then they move on to tell two different stories, which kind of, the stories kind of overlap, but they don't really sync up. Nell tries to tell a story about a boat trip that the two took when they were younger, and Nag, interrupting her, tells a long unasked for joke about a tailor. How we respond to Nag and Nell then depends a lot on what we think that Endgame is about. If indeed it makes sense to suggest that it is about anything at all, and it may well not do. But they could be seen as a kind of comic couple. Beckett's plays, often they are funny. They are intentionally funny. And parts of Endgame are funny too. In some ways, the entire setup of Endgame is funny. Nag and Nell share a kind of cheeky humour, and at the start of their dialogue appear to be genuinely affectionate for each other. Nell even asks her husband whether it's time for love when her head first pops up out of the dustbin. And of course, we can kind of respond to this as a slightly gross, absurd idea, but at the same time, they could be played and they could appear to be genuinely affectionate towards each other. There's no reason that this couldn't be taken literally as it's written. And in this way, we could view them as being in some way a kind of remnant of real affection in a world which appears to have lost almost every trace of kind of actual human feeling. At the same time, though, we could also see them as being a very sad illustration of the misery of old age, a state in which people sometimes become trapped between their most basic needs, or between needing their basic needs to be met by others, and their own fading memories of happier times. So, importantly, they're also quite stoic, and they do seem to be aware that they're in a miserable position. Nell is aware of her unhappiness, but she also admits that unhappiness is funny, even if you don't always laugh at it. And So yeah, after this, just some questions about how you guys might want to think about playing the characters, or thinking about how the characters might appear on stage. Don't forget that this is something that you will be asked to give a kind of commentary on how you might perform one of these couples if you were to put on a production of one of the plays that we're talking about. Okay, so would you play them as if they were aware of their situation? Would you play them as if they were affectionate? Would you play them as if they were completely miserable and kind of zoned out from everything that was going on? And of course, as I say, we also have the symbolic potential. Endgame is a play, as is Waiting for Godot, Beckett's other most famous play, which makes roughly about as much sense as Endgame, but is quite different too. But at the same time, both of these are works which lend themselves to kind of allegorical, symbolic readings. And one of the readings that we might give of Nag and Nell is a kind of psychological, Freudian one, in which they appear to be Ham's kind of projections. And they're kind of a symbol for the way in which parents continue to hang over us, or more specifically, our relations with our parents continues to define our lives even after we become adults and achieve independence. But as I say, even the symbolic reading here doesn't answer that many questions, and it also raises many other more questions. So if you want to kind of come up with your own reading of Endgame and think about what it means on an allegorical or a symbolic level, by all means you should, but be aware that Beckett's writing has a tendency to slip away from you as you try and impose a kind of fixed meaning on it. Okay, guys, so that's it really. Task for this week. You've got quite a few videos to watch, including the play. So if you watch the 2 introductory videos that will give you some info about Beckett's life and work, if you can, it's only about an hour and 20 minutes, so hopefully you should be able to, at some point throughout the week, watch the whole performance of Endgame. It's not easy to talk about this play if you don't know what already happens, because so little happens in terms of plot, that you really need to get a kind of sense for the atmosphere and a sense for the kind of way that time passes throughout the play in order to be able to get a grip on it at all. So yeah, I recommend that you watch it. Be aware that the actors in the performance have quite strong Irish accents, which means that you might not be able to understand everything that they're saying. But there's a script or a PDF of a publication of the play that you can look at too, and if you need to, you can follow along. There's also YouTube subtitles, which aren't great, obviously, but they do something which might help if you are having trouble understanding the accents of the characters. And then just have a think about how you'd stage Nag and Nell's relationship if you were asked to, or if you were doing your own production of the play. Think about some of these aspects. Do you imagine them looking at each other as they talk? Are they aware of what is happening around them? Do they show a sense of affection towards each other? Do they speak their lines mechanically or with genuine feeling? And you can think about how all of that might fit into a kind of vision that you have of the play itself, or what you think it might mean, or what it is that you find appealing, interesting, or even unappealing about the play. And yeah, we'll be having a catch-up session next week, so have a think about all of this for that session, because it will help you. Yeah, we can talk a bit about it too then, and also we'll be talking about Ham and Clove's relationship as well. So yeah, guys, I really hope that you like Endgame. I love it. I think Beckett is a really, really great writer, so I hope that you get something out of this too. And as always, email me if you have any questions about the course, about anything that I've said here, or about anything that you need to be thinking about in terms of the assessments. We've still got a few weeks before the assessments, but it's worth thinking a bit about what you might want to focus on. You have the list of the plays, so even if we haven't covered the play by the time that you want to do the assessment, you should at least have an idea of what it's about, and you should be able to you should be able to do something with it, even if you're writing about a play that we haven't spoken about yet when you want to write your assessment. But obviously, the assessments aren't in until week 12 anyway, so you will have time to cover everything other than the very final play, which is more of an extra than anything else. Okay, guys, sorry, I rambled off a bit at the end then, but I'm recording this quite late at night, so I'll excuse myself. I hope that you have a good week, and yeah, take care and get in touch if you need anything. Okay, bye.